Hey, have you ever wanted to look inside of Mario's head? Yep, well, probably not, but if you're able to equip a Shellmet or a Spiny Shellmet in the new Super Mario Bros. Game style, then you're able to do just that. Simply walk into a door and zoom in on Mario here and boom, we can see right through his skull. Welcome to the long-awaited episode 3 of the useless Mario Maker 2 facts series. I think the title is pretty clear, but this series focuses on giving facts about this game that don't really affect gameplay much at all. I always try to make these facts as obscure as possible to make sure that nobody's heard of these before. That's of course never a guarantee, but hopefully you learn at least something new. Now I've played this game a lot, and when I do, I like to mess around with a bunch of random things, so safe to say, I've noticed a bunch of details that I at least hadn't heard about anywhere else. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as it helps out a ton. Alright, let's jump straight into episode 3 of Useless Facts for Super Mario Maker 2. Well, since we're talking about seeing through Mario's head in the intro, let's go ahead and give a possible explanation as to why this is. The developers likely just cut off Mario's Shellmet model a bit too soon, namely cutting out the hair entirely. Since it's impossible to see from the side and very hard to see even when going through doors, it was left in. While on the topic of power-ups though, only one power-up, excluding the Shellmets, does not have a render associated with its controls in the Mario's Moves menu. Here, let's see if you're able to guess what it is before Luigi over here dies. Alright, countdown begin, Luigi! Okay, whatever, I forgot he sucks. Anyways, that power-up is the Super Ball Flower. Congratulations to those of you who got it in that very short time. I do find it weird that it was given a separate section at all though. I mean, the Fire Flower is combined within the regular Mario's controls, but the Super Ball isn't. I mean, they're basically the same power-up besides the Super Ball being somewhat more annoying to use. Sticking with this menu, can I just comment on the absolute disrespect they showed to the Drybones shell? Come on man, Drybones gets robbed out of everything, Drybones for Smash. For one, they combined its controls with the Lakitu Cloud and Clown Car, but more importantly, its controls are actually nowhere to be seen. There is nothing in this menu about equipping the shell while holding it, despite that being there for the regular Shellmets. Additionally, they have no information about its ground pound ability or even its main ability to crumble up. I mean, they just completely ignored this item entirely and just lazily slapped it in onto two entirely different items. Give our boy Drybone some justice, Nintendo. Now when I outlined this video, I didn't intend to stay on the Mario's Moves menu for long, but there were just more things that I noticed that I just had to mention. One super annoying one once you see it has to do with this Lakitu render. If you can't tell already, they completely forgot to fully crop out the inside of his goggles. As a result, you could still see the blue color of the sky instead of the red checkerboard pattern that's used in this menu. I mean, there's like a 1% chance this is how they meant for it to look, but come on, this just looks really weird once you see it. Oh, and this also goes for his render in the actual Maker as well. Have fun not unseeing this bright blue. Speaking of weird though, can we just take a moment to look at the headgear renders they used for 3D World? The Cannon Box and Propeller Box look fine because they already had a render, but for the others, especially the Bullet Bill masks, they just look incomplete. Like, I'm not sure what it is about these renders exactly, but they just don't look polished at all. I'm just going to assume they didn't feel like making brand new renders, so they just slapped the in-game models in here to fill it all out. Oh, also, really useful controls for the Gooba mask here. Definitely very important info. Alright, enough with the moves menu and renders, though we do have a few more render facts later on, so don't worry. Let's actually look at the selling point of the game, the Maker. One of the most useful tools in level designing is the undo dog, as it saves a ton of time erasing or just putting something back where you had it before. I'm sure most of you know that for the most part, these changes will happen instantly without any real animation to go with it. The only real exceptions is changing the theme and game styles. Well, that's not exactly true, as there is one item that I could find that does actually have an animation tied to it being undone. Basically, if you take a no-post chain chomp, add a post to it, and then undo that change, the post will actually go flying off of the screen as if you changed it yourself. It's especially fun when you have a large group of them. Man, my definition of fun has really been deteriorating lately. Now there's a chance there could be more like this that I missed, but I ran through a bunch of items and they still didn't have an animation. Even when I did it for Lakitu's Cloud, which will have a very similar animation to the chain chomp post when Lakitu is removed normally, we'll only have the Lakitu disappear. Very strange stuff. Now it's time for a few Link facts. Speaking of Link, if you didn't watch my last video about Mario Kart 8's crossover tracks, you totally should. It turned out very good. Anyways, right, Mario Maker 2. If you charge Link's dash attack and cancel it at just the right time, you'll be able to notice that the sparks from the Master Sword still linger in front of him for a few frames. This doesn't just remain where the Master Sword was though, as they will actually follow Link for the duration they're on screen. That means if he jumps or even turns around, the sparkles will still be right there in his face. I'm guessing they didn't program the sparkles to stop at any time, so they just play their full animation, regardless of if Link even has the Master Sword in his hands anymore. Now the much more interesting fact is that Link actually has a unique crouching sprite. Now when you crouch with Link during gameplay, he'll pull up his shield. I'm guessing they did this to make his controls as simple as possible. However, that does mean that he doesn't really have a standard crouch like Goomba Mario. Now that doesn't mean he doesn't have one at all though, because he does have one, we just can't use it in gameplay. A funny Easter egg occurs whenever you block Mario off from the castle at the end of a level. He'll basically just crouch in pain and sadness once the level is over. That got me thinking though, what does Link look like when this happens? It would be weird for him to pull up his shield as it doesn't really give off the same feel. So I tested it, and to my surprise, he actually has a unique crouching sprite that, as far as I can tell, can only be seen in this situation. Granted, it's not that different, but it's still different. This does bring up a few questions for me though, like did they make this sprite specifically for this Easter egg, or did they maybe intend for Link to be able to crouch before deciding to tie it to shields? Either way, this is definitely a fun little detail that I'm happy exists, whether it was fully intended or not. Alright, I know this series is supposed to be about useless facts, however, I feel like doing a little trolling. Partaking in a bit of tomfoolery, if you will. A major part of castle levels is the ending bridge. As most of you will know, you can actually jump through this bridge as if it's a semi-solid. This doesn't really come into effect often, but it's well known enough that I think it would be fun to mess with that a little bit. See, normally when you put blocks on top of the bridge, they'll go on top of it. That makes total sense. However, there is one item that is solid on all sides that is actually placed behind the bridge. I'll give you until Toad dies to guess it. Oh, come on! Well, if you said snake blocks, you get half credit because for some reason they appear behind it in the editor, but in front of it in gameplay. No, the real answer is conveyor belts. These guys are completely covered by the bridge in every single style except for New Soup. Not only that, but the conveyor belt's properties also do not carry over on top of the bridge. That means you can walk on top of it without being pushed around. Now, I was comfortable putting this in a useless facts video because it's so incredibly niche. However, I was able to come up with one use for it that I wanted to share. As I said, it involves a little trolling. Let's say you have a level where you can't touch the ground after leaving it, or in other words, basically a no jump level. What you could do is have the player enter into a room that's just under the bridge with the axe. At this point, a player's greed will likely kick in. Since everyone knows you could jump through bridges, you could just skip the rest of this level. So yeah, that's just one funny use for this. I know this isn't really a useless fact, but there was no other video I could put this in, and it's niche enough to the point where it's basically useless. Oh, speaking of almost useless, frozen coins don't melt in lava. I mean, if a small fireball can melt them, then surely molten lava could as well. Now it's time we shift our attention over to the new Super Mario Bros. U style because there are a few interesting things that separate this from the others. First off, I mentioned this in a previous video, but the Koopa Clown cars actually have a totally different name in New Soup. For whatever reason, they decided to change the name from Koopa Clown Car to the Junior Clown Car. They're basically the same thing, so why they felt the need to change its name is beyond me. The other two differences have to do with how some of its renders differ from 3D World. Since New Super Mario Bros. U and 3D World came out at very similar times, many of the item renders used between the themes are exactly the same. The most obvious are the basic power-ups being the Super Mushroom, Fire Flower, and Superstar. Even some enemies like Goombas have the exact same renders. There are two, however, that have very similar renders, but were both made slightly different. First off is the Boom Boom render. It's especially hard to see in the Maker itself, but the new Super Mario Bros. U version has spikes on his shell, whereas the 3D World Boom Boom does not. This is a very subtle change, but one that's definitely more accurate since the Mario U Boom Boom will actually have spikes. The other slightly changed render is for Magic Koopa. The renders are exactly the same, except the 3D World robes are slightly darker blue than the New Soup one. While changing the robes' colors is certainly more accurate, it just feels like a really weird thing to take the time to change. I mean, the Goomba's colors don't exactly match, but its render is the same. Don't get me wrong, I guess it's a nice thing to change, but it just seemed kind of unnecessary. Since we're on the topic of Magic Koopas, their name is actually different depending on what version of the game you have. In the British English version of the game, they're called Kamek, which is sort of weird. Kamek refers to the specific Magic Koopa that's seen as a main boss in the new Super Mario Bros. Titles and other games like Yoshi's Island. I guess that means in the American version, these are just random Magic Koopas, whereas the British English version uses the main Magic Koopa Kamek. The other item to change names in the British English version is the skewer, which is called the Spike Pillar over there. That change really makes no sense, especially since Spike Pillar is a way worse name than skewer. One last name I wanted to mention isn't a version difference, but instead just a name that bugs me. Let me put this item on screen. What do you think it's called? Brick, Bricks, or Brick Block? Well, time's up. It's actually called Block. Seriously, it's just called Block. I've gone my entire life calling these bricks, but I guess Nintendo just considers them to be a block. This name will forever bug me. Unfortunately, I don't care enough to call it by their official name, especially since not one person has ever told me I was wrong about it. Remember when I used to call hard blocks iron blocks? Those were good times. One of Mario Maker 2's new features was its multiplayer, and with that came this loser Luigi. I know you all hate it when I bully him, but it has to be said, I'm sorry. With this addition into the game, several of Mario's sprites had to be changed to accommodate him. For example, while Mario would normally wear the standard green tunic for Link when he equips the Master Sword, Luigi over here steals that color in multiplayer and leaves Mario with a red alternate. A similar thing happens with the frog suit. Mario normally wears the standard green color, but Luigi steals it in multiplayer, forcing Mario to wear red instead. I know it's because green is of course more associated with Luigi, but he's totally stealing Mario's look over here. At least he can steal his look back in Odyssey, where he isn't even playable. Luigi does get some of his own unique colors for the Fire Flower in this game though. In the original Mario Bros. And Mario Bros. 3, his Fire Flower sprite was actually exactly the same as Mario's. In order to make him stand out in Mario Maker 2, they were each given unique colors this time around. In this case, Luigi still has these new colors even in single player though. That does make a lot of sense. Having Luigi with Mario's Fire Flower colors just does not feel natural at all. Okay, before we end this video, let's look at a few miscellaneous facts that didn't really fit into any categories. First off is something that really annoys me, and it has to do with the shadows in this game. In Mario 1, 3, and World, Mario will cast a shadow onto the background. This is already weird enough, however this shadow will actually go behind background elements like bushes, semi-solids, and so on. This just really annoys me because it just looks so strange seeing a shadow come from behind a bush. In the story mode level, Cheep Cheep Maze, I was messing around while getting footage for my nighttime themes video, and I found out that the developers never actually finished the roof to this stage. You normally can't see it due to this being one of those incredibly disgusting nighttime underwater levels, however if you go into the Luigi helper mode or just give Mario a star, you'll be able to see it. There's even a ground decoration in the hole left over, which I think is pretty funny. In 3D World, Mario won't actually stand on top of the on-off variant of the mushroom trampoline, instead he'll just sort of hover beside it. This looks really weird once you notice it. And finally, the one and only fact taken from one of you all was by Ultra on my Discord, otherwise known as traditional levels are based. They showed off that for whatever reason, the bottoms of bullet bill blasters will actually look completely different depending on its height. If the bill blaster is any taller than the default 2 blocks, then for some reason it gets this weird extra slab at the bottom. I'm sure some of you already knew that, but I really never acknowledged it until he pointed it out to me, so thanks for that. As for the community post I made asking for facts, well, let's just say there weren't many good useless facts, just a lot of very true statements. But anyways, that's it for this video. Are you all mad at me for letting this video come out 11 months after the last one? Let me know in the comments. If you all didn't watch my last video covering the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe crossover tracks, then I would really greatly appreciate it if you did. I worked incredibly hard on it and I think it turned out great. It underperformed by a lot, which was expected, but still a bit sad to see. If you're wondering why this video was pushed out so quickly after that, it's because I really made a push for this one to be done as soon as possible to make up for it. That means that this video is shorter than I would have liked, but sadly that's just how YouTube is now. Just be happy I'm not making shorts yet, but the way YouTube is going, I'm scared I'll have to eventually. But I'm gonna push that off as far as I can. If you enjoyed this video and don't want to see shorts take over, please make sure to leave a like. The Discord server I mentioned before is also in the description along with my Twitter and Maker ID. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.